Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at playing multiple sounds in Android. So at the moment we can play one sound, but of course I'd like to be able to play lots of sounds in my game. And to do that it's pretty simple, and if you follow the last tutorial you can probably already guess how to do it. In game at the moment I'm loading a kind of startup sound and I'm playing it as soon as it's loaded, and when we load a sound we get an ID of the sound. So the first step is to load all the sounds that I want to use and to get IDs back from them, and the init method of my game I think is as good a place to do that as any. But now I need some way of storing the IDs of these sounds and being able to refer to them later. And the ideal thing for this will be to use a map, but the only problem with a map is that if you've got a lot of sounds you don't really want to be looking things up in a map in order to play a sound, because conceivably that could introduce a delay, although I think in practice it's quite unlikely that anyone's ever going to notice a delay unless you've got a game with thousands of sounds in it. But nevertheless, let's try to do something a little bit faster than looking up a sound in a map. So what I'll do is I'll first create let's maybe have a abstract class here. So I'll create a class called sounds, and I don't want to instantiate this class, so I'll make it abstract. I'll say public abstract class, and this is going to be purely a place where I can hold some constants. So I'm going to say public final static int start equals 0, and I'm going to use these values as an index into an array where I'll store the actual IDs of each sound. So this is going to be a kind of mnemonic to enable us to remember the kind of sound that we're looking for. So let's just copy that, and I'm going to have start, win, lose, and bounce 1 and bounce 2. So let's have start, win, lose, bounce 1, and this is going to be the sound that the ball makes when it hits the bat, and bounce 2. And I'm just going to set these to consecutive values, and this is a little bit hacky really, and we should use a map. But as I say, for the sake of speed, I'm going to just do it this way. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now in my game, I'm going to have an array. So let's say private int sounds, and that's going to be an array of integers. Let's say int array. I've got a little problem with my typing a right hand bracket in Eclipse because it conflicts with some kind of shortcut, I think. Let's say private int array sounds equals new int array, and I'll make this I'll make this an array of 5 integers. And now what I can do is I can go to the point where I loaded one sound and I can load all of them. So instead of saying final int start sound ID here, I'm going to say sounds and start. So what I'm doing is I've used my constant, which is I started these constants numbering at 0 and then going consecutively, and actually I need to say sounds.start, and I'm then using those as the index into my array. And the idea is then if I want to look up a sound using, for example, sounds.start, it's going to be very fast to go immediately to the correct ID of that sound, which soundpool.load returns in that array, rather than using a map to store the kind of name of the sound versus the ID of it, which will be a tiny bit slower. So I'll just copy this, and we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to have sounds.start and 1 win, lose, bounce 1 and bounce 2. And now I need to fill in the resource IDs here. So I've got r.raw.win, r.raw.lose, and bounce 1 and bounce 2. And in this load thing here, this init method seems as good a place as any to play the startup sound. So I just need to make sure that I'm looking at if sample ID equals this start sound, then I'll play it here. And to get the idea of it, I look it up in that array like that. Or I could just actually use the, it will make more sense really, just use the sample ID that's passed in to this method. So this array is just storing the sample IDs of each sample. So now I should be able to play any sound when I feel like it. And for the rest of the sounds, I'm just going to call sound.play at the right moment. And I won't worry about checking that they're loaded because it doesn't seem to give an error if it's not loaded, as far as I can see. But if you want to look into that further, be my guest. But I think I'm content just to call play and hope that it works because it seems to be all right. So let's copy this, and I could put in a kind of lost sound here. So if they've lost, we'll go to case.lost. In fact, that isn't a good place to put it at all because that's the draw method. Let me get rid of that. Let's look for a sensible place to put this. So in update game, at this point, this just gets called once. I switch the state to lost, and then it's in the state lost, and update game will only be called if the state's running. So this seems like a good place to play the lost sound. Let's put it in here. And the sample ID is going to be sounds, and the class name sounds.lose. And let's put the win sound in as well. So I change the state to 1 here, and this is where I play the win sound. And then the really interesting bits are the bounce sounds for when the ball hits the bat. And somewhere in here we've got some code that detects that the ball has hit the bat, and that happens in update game, I should think, if I remember rightly. Let's take a look in update game. So here we're saying that if the ball is if the kind of left hand bat hits the ball, then we tell the ball to start moving right. And I might have to, if I find that this is going to play double sounds like this, it may be that this is called multiple times really quickly, one after the other. We'll check and see if that is the case, and if so, I need to put in a little bit of code to stop that happening. But let's just try this, and let's say bounce 1, and similarly here I'm going to say play bounce 2. Now let's see how that works, and I'll click run, and with a bit of luck it'll work right out of the box. And if not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check here and say if the ball is moving, I could do something like if the ball is moving left, then make it move right and play the sound, and maybe that would ensure that I can only play one sound. But let's, rather than speculate, let's just see how it works in practice. Okay, so my game's running now, and I should be able to go to the screencast, and let's click start, and it hit the bat, and that actually seems to work pretty well. It's not the best bounce sound in the world, and it has actually got a sort of bass aspect to it, but the kind of bass aspect is sort of dwarfed by the white noise that I've added, and both the sounds actually sound different, but playing on the phone you can't really tell. So I could have chosen better sounds, but that's not the point here, and you can see that it works. And let's just lose, and we should hear the lose sound. So I'll move the bat out of the way. There we go, you lost. And we could play the start sound when you start playing again actually, but anyway, that's enough for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we're going to look at changing the volume in response to the user changing the volume using the button on the side of the phone, which would be quite handy rather than playing it at maximum volume all the time. So until next time, happy coding.